Before we start this episode, a large thank you to Zanji, Benjamin, Pez, Nick, Chase, Josh, Nicola, Craig, Ias, Sam, and Napasorn for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And a massive thank you to Slim Shaggy for their immense support to the channel on Patreon. You are greatly appreciated, my friend. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and today we're going to start by first fixing a bug I was notified about. So your character probably walks at you like this. All you have to do is go to the character animator manager and just delete this line of code. So basically this was happening because the character was only using root motion when we were performing an action, but now we want the character to use root motion all the time. Okay, so next we're going to add equipment load to the game as requested by somebody. So let's go to the character stats manager and make a header and just call this equipment load. Now we just need a couple variables here, 3 actually. So we're gonna make the first one public float current equipment load. And then we need a public float for our max equipment load. And then we need an enum to track which state of encumbrance we're on. So it could be light, medium, heavy, or overloaded. And you can obviously make as many states as you want. I'm just going to use the generic 4 from Souls. So let's go to our enums now. Let's make an enum for that. And I'm just going to put this anywhere here. And I'm going to call it encumbrance level. Call it whatever you want as long as you can remember it. Make it clear. And I'm just going to, as I said, put the 4 types in here. So light, medium, heavy, and overloaded. So the idea here is that when we change our equipment, we want to check our equipment load. And every time we change our stamina level, whether that be from a character effect or from leveling up, we want to recalculate our max equipment load. So that's very important. If you have a ring that increases your stamina or any kind of thing like that, make sure you're always calling the function for recalculating it that we're going to create. So I'm just going to make a comment here. Again, this is like, for example, could change your rolls. You got a light roll, a med roll, a heavy roll, and this will limit your speed to a walking speed only. You can also change stuff like backsteps. You can go as far as change how your jumping animation is. It's really quite simple once you see the implementation. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you. We're going to go down here now and create our first function of the video. I'm going to call this public void because it's called from other places, or you may need to call from other places. Calculate and set max equipment load. So basically it's quite simple. You get a base equipment load that you start off with. I believe Souls or Elden Ring is 45. I can't remember what Dark Souls is, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to say starting equipment load is equal to 40. And this is what you start off with without factoring in your levels. Now you could make a float here like a temporary variable. And you could call it like stamina or like equipment load level calculation, whatever you want. But since I'm just going to use the stamina stat, much like Elden Ring and Dark Souls 1, I'm just going to make a for loop here, and we're going to say for I is less than stamina level. So for every stamina level, we're putting I plus 1. Now we run a few checks in here. Now, if I is, you can kind of set your gradients here for how you want the levels to be. So if I is less than 26, so if your stamina level is being added up and it's still less than 26, then we can, I'm going to change this from starting equipment load now to total equipment load because it makes more sense. We can say total equipment load equals total equipment load plus, and you can have whatever your level you want to be. So for example, if you want your equipment load to go up by 1.2F for every stamina level under level 26, then you can do that. And then you can change it here. You could say if I is greater or equal than say 27, I'm just throwing out random numbers to you guys, and it's less than or equal to 50. So you can, I'm just going to make this even actually for the sake of the video. So we'll say 25 here. And then we'll put it between 25 and 50. So basically what I'm trying to say is if you want to make your equipment load go up by 1.2 for every level less than 25, but then change it to 1.4 for every level greater than 25 and less than 50, you can do that. So you can change the returns of how great it is based on your stamina level. And this is kind of what Dark Souls does with scaling. You'll notice that you'll get greater gains between some level thresholds. This could be for your vitality or your endurance, stamina, whatever you want really. You can do the same here just using a for loop like this and just make checks between the numbers that you desire. So you can get really intricate with this. And the alternative is you can write a really complex math equation to do all this for you. But this is a lot easier to read and it's a lot easier to just kind of change very dramatically on the fly. So and then you just end off by saying your max equipment load is equal to your total equipment load. And that's really it for this function. You want to call that on start. And we also need to make a function for calculating our current equipment load based on our equipment. So let's find where we call our equipment to, or find where we equip everything and do our calculations rather. But first, let's actually find where we level up our stamina. So go to where you level up and where you confirm that you've changed your levels on the confirm player stats. recalculate your equipment and your equipment load. It would also be wise to call this if you guys have a player save system fleshed out right now, because I'm sure a lot of you do. Call this when you're loading your game last. So after you've reset or adjusted your stats when you're loading your character, call that function again at the very last bit of the calculation. So when you set your stamina and all that stuff again, call it after that. Now let's make a new void for calculate and set current equipment load. So what we need to do here, well, this one's pretty straightforward. We need to pass a float for the current total equipment load that we have. And then based on that equipment load, we are going to basically set our encumbrance level. So again, I'm going to use a calculation roughly akin to Souls. I'm not sure the exact numbers. This might be it, actually. I think it's the breakpoints are 30 and 70%. Could be mistaken because it could differ from game to game. But let's go up here first and make an enum, a public enum. I'm going to call this encumbrance level. And again, this is going to be defaultly set to light. And we're going to go up from there as your equipment increases. So I'm just going to start, or we'll actually change that from equipment load to encumbrance level. That's a lot clearer to me. I'm going to start by saying encumbrance level is equal to encumbrance level.light. So before we do anything, we're just going to say it's at light. And then, very simple, I'm not going to overcomplicate this. If our current equipment load is greater than our max equipment load, and then we can say times 0.3 for the first breakpoint, then we're going to be basically saying if our current equipment load is greater than 30% of our max load, then we're now at the point where we're at a medium weight. So that's all that means. If we're greater than 30% of our max equipment load, we're now at the medium weight breakpoint. If it's higher than, we'll say 70%, then it's going to be now at the heavy point equipment load. And lastly, if we're just greater than the max equipment load at all, then we are now overloaded. So we can only walk. And I think some games may even make it so you can no longer roll this equipment load. You just kind of make a weird little animation. So now we need to call this function wherever we are equipping something or changing our armor. So I believe that's in the player equipment manager. And I think it's called equip all equipment models, but we're going to change that because that name is a bit misleading. So we're just going to change this to equip all armor because it's not only the models that are changing here, it's the stats as well, the poison resistances, all that stuff. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the poison resistance. Right at the bottom here, player.playerstatsmanager.calculate current equipment load and pass to 0 for now so it doesn't give us an error. We're going to change that in a second. And right at the top, let's take a look with how we did poison resistance. If we go to equipment item, you can see we have no weight. So let's make a weight variable here first. Going to make a header, call it weight. I'm going to make a public float and again call it weight. You can initialize it if you want to, but this is going to heavily differ from item to item. So 0 will probably be default for some items though. So let's go over here now back on this equip all armor. At the top, you see we have a float for poison resistance. Let's do the same thing. Float for total equipment load. Initialize that at 0. And we're basically going to take that now and we're going to check for all these pieces. We can pass at the bottom now, by the way. So you can pass the total equipment load instead of passing 0. So inside here, if our helmet equipment is not null, then we know we need to add to our total equipment load the helmet's weight. So we're going to say total equipment load plus equals player.playerinventorymanager.currenthelmet.weight. And then you just do the exact same thing here for every piece of equipment. So I won't repeat myself. I'll show you. I'll do it and I'll talk about the system while I'm kind of typing this in here. So do it for the body and the legs and the hands. And the idea here is that, again, we want to change some of our actions when we hit certain breakpoints of equipment load, okay? So in Souls, there's a light roll, a medium roll, a heavy roll. And I believe when you're over encumbered, you can't roll. And I'm not sure if there are backstep changes. To be honest with you, I can't quite remember. But I'm going to show you how to implement both. And I'm going to just drag and drop in a heavy roll animation here. So I'm not going to insert my light, medium, heavy, and my over encumbered kind of stagger animation. You guys can insert whatever you want. The main key point here is I'm going to just give you the functionality. And if you have the animations, go ahead and insert them. So let's start by also changing the weight on some of our equipment, because right now by default it's going to be all 0. We need to make sure we're fixing that. And I'm just going to go through all the pieces of equipment I have here and kind of insert some random numbers. I'm going to keep it pretty general. Plate bodies will be heavier than legs. Legs will be heavier than helmets. Helmets will be heavier than gloves, or about the same weight. And once that's all well and good, we can kind of drop into the game and see if things are changing as they should. So go to player, make sure we got everything equipped. You can see here in the player stats manager, we have light 0, 0 because the game is not started. That's good. It's working as intended. Before we do this, go into the character stats manager and change the private void start to a protected virtual void start. And then go to the player stats manager and override the start and call the base class. So we're doing our calculation. This is a very old piece of code that apparently we missed when we were doing a housekeeping video. So I'm going to say I can't say override start because I haven't deleted the first one yet. So I'm just going to copy everything inside here and then delete it and then say override start. I'm going to keep the base.start, so it calls the base class logic on start. And then I'm going to drop in all of this code and I'm going to save it. And now this should work as intended. So let's go over to the game and check it out. And yes, so I have a max equipment load of 52. I have a current equipment load of 13 and my encumbrance level is light. So that is working as intended. Excellent. Now, I'm going to go and search for the input handler so we can see where I'm calling my role. I don't believe it's from here. I believe it's from the locomotion manager. I'm just going to check. So I'm going to minimize this, handle move inputs. So we can do the handle move input here actually first while we're here anyway. So let's say if player.is holding arrow or player.player_stats_manager.encumbrance level equals over encumbrance level.overloaded. We want to force the player to walk. So equals, that should be, by the way. So basically, we're going to cap the move amount at 0.5 if we're overloaded. So let's check this out now. You can see here I have the encumbrance level set to overloaded, and I can only walk. So that should work for you guys too in games. Test it out there. That's awesome. So next, we want to actually edit our roles and our backsteps. I'm going to duplicate this role state, paste it here, and then make a transition back to empty. I'm just going to put the keyword heavy in front of it. And again, you can do this for light, medium, and heavy. And if you even want to, an special animation for overloaded. And I'm going to make that transition back to the empty state. I'm going to drop my animation here like so. And I am going to open up I think it's the player locomotion manager. Let's check. Yeah, so we're setting a flag true here, so that will be on the player locomotion manager. So let's go open that up. Let's drop down here to the handle roll and sprinting. Here we go. So you could do a few things here. You could insert a chain of if statements like this, because since we only have 4 possibilities, I would say that's totally fine. Honestly, I don't see a problem with chain if statements. If they're very clear, it's only becomes dirty to me when they're kind of coupled inside of each other over and over and over and over and over again. That's when it becomes problematic for me and confusing to read. But all in all, in this situation, totally fine. Now, you can do what I do though instead. So I'm going to write out the if statement chain here, but then I'm going to immediately change it. So this is fine, as you can see, and you could just insert your animation into all these. But I'm going to say player.player_stats_manager, I'm going to type the keyword first, switch, and I'm going to press tab twice, and I'm going to type in player.player_stats_manager.encumbrance level, and then I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to autofill this for me. And instead of doing the if statement, I'm just going to use a switch statement because it's a lot more condensed, and we're only using a singular line of code in this circumstance. So to me, it looks a lot better too. So we can eradicate the if statement here, and right where we have our light, medium, heavy, and overloaded, just copy and paste the animation that you want. So it's one line of code. It's play this animation, and then you can just change it to what you want. So I'm going to keep the light and medium the same, and I'm going to change the heavy and overloaded to heavy roll, just like that. And now the same is true down here for your backstep. Again, use the switch statement by typing in switch, and then hitting tab twice, and then putting player.player_stats_manager.encumbrance level, and then clicking anywhere off of it or hitting enter, and then you should have this. And then again, copy your line of code, delete it from here, and paste it, and change your backstep animation as you desire. You can also do this with anything, guys. Like if you want to do this with your jumping animation too, if you want to get real creative, just check for your encumbrance level before performing an action. You can change it. So this is my light roll, as you can see. It's rolling around fine. I'm going to change my encumbrance level here to heavy, and this is my heavy roll, and that is going really fast. Why is that going so fast? Oh, my roll speed was modified here in the animation state, so I've set that to 1. I'll just show you again. So this is the heavy roll now, but let's do a comparison where we see the light and heavy back to back, just so you can see the real difference. So that's the heavy roll, and let's go to the player, and I'm going to change this to the light roll, and you can see that's significantly faster. So there we go. That does definitely impact the flow of gameplay. Again, back to heavy. Let's go with this again. And you can see that is a lot different. So the animations really will make or break the feel here for you guys. Okay, guys, so if you find any bugs related to the character controller swap over, let me know, and I will fix them totally. And also, if you made it this far, please be sure to drop a like, leave a comment. It does genuinely help with the series so much. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.